Hello, I'm Deb Morgan, and welcome to another episode of the Real Relationships Show, the Powerball series. I am joined today by the incredible, the epic Cheryl Broughton from Los Angeles. Cheryl, hello and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, Cheryl, we're here to talk about your relationship story and your relationship journey. But first of all, I have to ask you a question because when I send out my questionnaire to do a little bit of research before the show, I ask people what their job is. And you've got author and mindset coach, and you also have aerialist. I'm
Yes.
fascinated. Tell me, what is an aerialist? What do you do as an aerialist?
Awesome. Okay. Well, if you've ever seen a Cirque du Soleil show, you know
Hmm.
how the performers hang from the ceiling and they're wrapped up in this fabric. It looks like a curtain, or maybe they're hanging on a round circular object. It's called a
Hmm.
hoop or a lyra. So I do trapeze, I do lyra, I do silks, I do a bit of everything. And do you want to hear how I got into it?
I'd love to. Yes, please.
Okay. So, in about 2009, I was the founder. I was in like my ninth year of being a founder of a mind and body fitness boot camp.
Hmm.
So I was doing extremely hard workouts. I was the commander, and I was the one that lifted all these people up, encouraged them, did mindset things with them, and then I also did these physical feats with them. Then I had a lot of pressure on myself because I was on magazines and newspapers. I was writing articles. I was hosting
Hmm.
infomercials. So I had a lot of pressure I was putting on myself to be thin, to look good, to look young. You name it. And then it started taking a toll on my body. My hair started thinning and falling out. I was having like panic attacks, anxiety. And then I started having knee pain. And the knee pain got to a point where it got so bad, I decided to go to the doctor. And when I had all these x-rays and MRIs taken, the doctor said, I don't know how you're walking, you're bone on bone. You need both knees replaced right now. And if you don't have it done, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life.
Oh no.
So that put me, here I was, this commander leading all these people,
Mm.
but and I knew better, but it knocked me for a loop. And I went into a little bit of a depression for about 3 months because I thought, my gosh, my life is over. Fitness is my life. What am
Hmm.
I going to do? I can't be this rickety old lady standing in front of these people while I'm
Mm.
encouraging, going through a boot camp, a fitness boot camp. And so I was like, okay, fine. If I'm that old, because she really made me feel like I was like about to
Hmm.
South, when a horse gets old, they say you put it out to pasture and
Yeah.
you let it die. That's what I felt like. I was only 42 years old, but she made me feel like this old horse that needed to go out there and retire. So I was like, okay, if this is true, then I better make a list of all the things that one with arthritis should not be able to do. So I started making a list of all things I better do it right now in case I just fall apart. And I had always wanted to learn aerial fitness, but I didn't even know what it was called. I was researching online, and everything that I was coming across were schools for like very young athletes, like Russian gymnasts. And
Hmm.
you had to audition in order to get into the school. So I kept searching and searching. And then one day when I wrote it, you know how like when you speak it and you set it out to the universe,
Uh-huh.
I wrote it and I said, I am going to learn this thing. I didn't even know what this thing was, but I kept visualizing. I kept seeing myself up in the air and climbing and doing all the things that I had seen in a Cirque show years prior. And so as soon as I stated it, it was so freaky. Like within, I want to say a week to 2 weeks, there was this email. And over here, we have this thing called Groupon where they
Hmm.
send you, you probably have it there,
Yes,
where
we do.
and the Groupon said aerial fitness for everyday people. And I was like, that's what it's called. Okay, that's it. So I went to this studio. I was the oldest one in class. It was a challenge, my first class, but it was easy on my joints. And I knew it right then. That is what I was going to do. So I started going 2 days a week for 2 years. I eventually started, I started performing and teaching in aerial. And sometimes I've done shows, I've done performances as high as 140 feet over water.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I took that story and I turned it into a positive. And at the time, I didn't realize, I knew I was changing my chemistry. I knew I was changing my vibrations. But now that all these years have passed and I've done further research, I realized what I was doing is I was emitting a different signal. So I was putting myself in a state of already being there, already doing it. And so my ambition and my passion to make it through this was greater than my excuses. And that is what's kept me going. So here I am, 53 years old. I'm still doing it today. I never had the surgery. I started taking some really good supplements, and I do healing visualizations every day, like religion. I see my body healing every day. Now, do I have sore joints sometimes? Yes. Do my knees still grind a little? Sometimes. But I immediately get back in check, and I really do. I check myself and I'm like, oh, what are you thinking? And then I start to see my body healing again and again. And here I am. I'm 53 and I can do things now in my 20s. I mean, I can do things now in my 50s that I couldn't even do in my 20s, like the splits.
Wow, that is fantastic. And oh my goodness, I could talk to you for hours about that, but that's not why we're here. Although it does tell me a lot about your relationship with yourself. So, there is a good conversation to be had around that. But that's not just the only story that you have changed in your life, is it? Yeah, I know you've got a relationship story that you have changed
Mm-hmm.
for the positive. And I'd like to find out a bit more about that, if I may. So can you tell me what happened? Because I've got a little bit of information about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have changed your story.
Mm-hmm.
So talk me through the previous story, if you will.
Sure, sure. I actually have two major relationship stories in my life, and I'll be brief on the first one. The first one, I had just moved out of my house and I moved in with a boyfriend I'd been dating for many years. And he was unfortunately under the influence of steroids, and steroids
Mhm.
will change a person's personality, for the majority, it seems like. And his fits of rage were just unreal. I would come home some days from work, and the drawers would be all pulled out, every drawer in the house, and its contents were empty on the floor. And I'll never forget this. One day I came home and the whole house was destroyed, and I thought we had been robbed. I thought
Mm.
someone had ransacked the house. And I see him and he's sitting there and all this stuff is on the floor, and I'm like, what what happened? What's going on? His answer was, oh, I couldn't find my hairbrush.
Oh my goodness.
Couldn't find my hairbrush. So that's the kind of over
Mhm.
reactions that he would have. And then I'll make a long story short. One day he went to, we were going to go bowling, and he wanted me to wear a particular outfit, and I didn't want to wear it. And that escalated. He pushed me in the closet, knocked me to the back of the closet. I fell down. All the clothes started coming off the hangers. And in that moment, and that's what it takes for a lot of us, is we've got
Mm.
to have our line in the sand moment. And there had been many fights prior to, but that moment when he punched me in the stomach, and we had a friend in the living room, I was like, that's it. I can't do this anymore.
Mm.
So I was able to get out of that relationship. I was able to get my parents to help me. They came in and helped me move my things. Now, what's funny is, many times in life, we don't learn the first time. We got
No,
to go
that's
through
true.
this again. So I went through some other boyfriends, and I had good boyfriends and not so great boyfriends. But then we'll fast forward to the most significant relationship that really made a profound effect in my life. So this person, I was in a relationship for 8 years, and I lived with him and his two boys, and his two boys were amazing. And he would have these moments of where he was so generous and loving and kind. And in public, he was charismatic. He was fun. Everybody thought he was the life of the party. And then we would get home or we'd get in the car, and he's just like like yelling and screaming. And his temper was very short fused. He would just change in an instant. And there were many, many times where he would threaten me and threaten my life.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget this one time. We were on a cruise with the boys, and we're at the back of the ship. And he says to me, "You're lucky there are people around, or I would throw you off the back of this ship. No one will ever know. You will never be missed." And I was like, and to spectators, they probably thought he's whispering in my ear saying sweet nothings, but he was
Mm.
threatening my life. So this went on for 8 years. And the irony of it is he was in the self-help field.
Oh my
He
goodness.
had he had a line of tapes, and tapes tells you how long ago this
Hmm.
was, back when we
Hmm.
had cassette tapes. Now, the great thing about him is that he had this other side, and he made these wonderful tapes. He helped many people. I saw his testimonies from customers saying, "You changed my life." But what they didn't know is that on this other side was this other
Mm.
character. So after many, many years, after 8 years, I was finally able to break free. And during that time, I had a business. While we were in this very crazy relationship, I had the boot camp. So what my boot campers didn't know is every day I was waking up. I was getting up at about 3:45, 4 a.m. so that I could get there, be alert, be awake, and be happy. What they
Wow.
didn't know is that while I'm lifting them up and motivating them, as soon as I get home, I'm getting yelled at, screamed at, told I
Mm.
was stupid, ugly, I'll never make it in life. I'll never go anywhere. And luckily, eventually I was able to get out. It took some time. Um, yeah. And now here's the irony of this. It took many, many years later for me to realize, and I actually just wrote about this the other day. So Louise Hay, she talks about
Mhm.
different ailments in our body and
Yes.
how it is unresolved issues. And when I read the statement that said arthritis, which I had, it's
Hmm.
usually the result of repressed anger, not being able to speak your feelings out. What was the other one? It was just a long list of
Mm.
characteristics, and I was like, oh, that's me. Oh my gosh, that's what's going on. I have not released this anger. So it wasn't until many years later. Now, I had forgiven him in a sense immediately after that, but not completely. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't until many, many years later that I was able to start listing the benefits. I started going through a process. I actually eventually got trained in the DeMartini method, which really
Hmm.
helps you see both sides to everything. And I had so much gratitude for what I went through because I learned so much. I learned
Yes.
about myself. I learned about what he was going through in life. It wasn't just he wanted to be mean, he had other things going on.
Hmm.
And once I released that, and then for those who are listening who might have arthritis, there may be something deep down inside you need to release as well. And I really believe that has helped me make it through the arthritis. So it's been
Wow.
a
That's
journey.
incredible. And I'd like to explore a bit further, if you don't mind,
Mhm.
um, and rewind a little bit, because I always say, and my signature program is called Behind the Mask. So you've just given us a really good example of how women and men as well, they have abusive relationships, but people in an abusive relationship very often put on this mask when they're presenting themselves to the public. And I'm interested at the lengths you went to getting up at 3:45, 4 in the morning to get yourself to work so that you could present this happy, confident, outgoing image to your customers, your clients. And at any point during that time, did you ever think, what am I doing?
Oh yeah. That was also part of my stress levels. And I think that's why my hair was falling out. I think that's why I
Mm.
was having these other issues. I was having digestive issues. Um, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, someone's going to see right through this one day. Someone's going to ask me just the right question, and I'm just going to be like, start crying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to let it all out. And I had a couple of people that knew me closely that kind of got that vibe from him, that maybe he had this insane anger, but no one knew the full spectrum. I couldn't tell anyone. Now, for those who are listening, many times you might be someone who's well known in your local town, and many people knew us in town. So he was so here, I'll give you another story. Here's another thing that really helped me. It got so bad, I went to domestic violence. Now, it had to take a lot for me to get to that point, because if I walked into that place, there might be people there who have seen me on local newspapers, on local TV stations, on covers of magazines here in our town. And I had to take that risk. So what did I do? I walked in, I gave a fake name, I wore a hat, I wore glasses, no makeup. I tried as much as I could to disguise myself. Now, here's the crazy thing. I walk in and I sit down in the little entry area, and there's a coffee table, and then there's a magazine. And I look down and I'm like, no, what am I going to do? It was me on the cover of that magazine with two other girls, and I had to flip it over, and I had to like go back to like talking to the lady who was indoctrinating, like telling me what's going on there. And I couldn't let her know. Now, that was a very pivotal moment, and I actually talk about it in my book. So there's this lady, we're sitting down in this group, and there's this lady that's in her 70s. So at that time I was in my 30s, and this lady says, well, hi ladies, so here's a tip that I do. My husband yells at me. Now, she's not saying it with this positive attitude, but in my mind I'm thinking, okay, she's being very positive about this. But she says every night when she goes to bed, she takes this huge safety pin and clips it to the keys to her car, and then pins it to her underwear. She was in her 70s. She did that every night because her husband would threaten to kick her out every single night. And that was something that my boyfriend at the time was threatening to do to me too. He threatened to just so many different things. And that moment right there, when I heard her story, I was like, I don't want to be a 70-year-old lady going through this. This has got to stop. So that was a pivotal moment in my life. And that helped me get the wheels rolling and a forward momentum to start making some very important changes in my life.
Goodness. And there's so many stories like that out there, like yours, like that of the 70-year-old lady who really sort of gave you that kick that you needed, that boost you needed. But I'm interested because there's a lot of research out there. We're often presented with varying statistics. How long was it before you acknowledged that you were in an abusive relationship?
Oof. Gosh, that's a great question. The crazy thing is, about 2 weeks into the relationship, 2 weeks. Well, let me back up a little bit. We had dated over the phone. I lived in one town, he lived in the other. So it was like a 2-hour drive. So we talked for about 3 months before we had our first date. And then when we had our first date, then about 2 weeks later, I may get the dates a little wrong, but once we established that we were dating, we went on a vacation in his RV, and it was a 2-week vacation. And we went to Hearst Castle, and he had a video camera, and he asked me to film everything. Now, up to that moment, so all those months prior, all the dates prior, and then when we went on this vacation, I had officially moved in with him. So 2 weeks after moving in with him, we had this road trip, and he started yelling at me. He goes, "Did you fade out?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "Did you hit the fade out button? You stupid bump, 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 bump." And I was like, oh, and I looked to the boys like, "Did you just hear that? Like, isn't this weird? Isn't this unusual?" And they just kind of looked around like, doo, 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 doo. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, this is what he does. They know this.
Oh,
And
goodness.
I was 2 weeks into the relationship, but he was so wonderful. He was so charismatic. He had done all these wonderful things, but I ignored it. And I know there are women out there, you want to give them forgiveness. You want to just dismiss it and go, oh, he's just having a bad moment.
Mm-hmm.
So this just went on for years and years. So I can't believe I'm admitting this, but 2 weeks into it, I knew there was something up, that this was not like there was something going on with him, but it probably was like only just a few months into it before I realized the magnitude. And now for you and those listening, you might be wondering, well, why did you stay? And the thing of it is, I fell in love with his boys. I did not have children. He had two amazing boys that just looked up to me like I was their mother. And all I kept thinking every time was like, I've got to show them a better way. Like, I've got to help them understand that this is not how a man or a parent treats their children. So not only was he abusing me, but he was also abusing them. And yeah, I held on for them.
And it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, the work
Yeah.
I do, so many couples say, oh, we're staying together for the children.
Yes.
And, as we get older, we learn that our experience of relationships or our knowledge of relationships is picked up by what's modeled to us from our parents and our grandparents and those around us. And we are modeling to our children how to have healthy relationships. And if your relationship is not healthy, guess what? Your children are going to go into relationships and become abusive to an extent because they believe that's how relationships happen. Now, that's not to say that children will then grow up to become physically abusive, but I do see a lot of emotional abuse and manipulation. I'm not going to say narcissistic children, because if they've grown up surrounded by it, they don't even recognize what it is. To them, that's normal. But we do have an increase in narcissistic abuse. And I'm convinced it's because the people who are abusing others narcissistically have grown up in an environment where they may not have been physical abuse, but the emotional abuse and manipulation is enough to make them think, well, I'm being good, I'm being kind because I'm not hitting my partner. And I hear that a lot as well. In fact, my second husband said that to me: you should be grateful I don't beat you like your first husband did, which at the time I agreed with him. Now what was I thinking? But when we are in those relationships on a day-to-day basis, it's about survival as well and self-preservation, isn't it? And I think statistic, it's possibly changed, but at one point it was a woman will endure 35 different attacks before leaving her abuser. And you've just said you knew 2 weeks in that this wasn't a healthy relationship. Yet you continued for years. I dread to think how many different attacks you endured over that period of time. But thankfully, you came out of it. So tell me, what was the moment when you thought, this isn't me, it doesn't matter, I can't stay here for the kids any longer, I've got to put myself first? Was there a specific moment or not?
Probably, no, it's not a probably. It just came up clear as a bell. It was the moment that we were in bed and we were going to bed, and he leaned over and he whispered in my ear, I am going to ruin you. I'm going to, and here's the funny thing is, sometimes his threats were ridiculous. So he started off by saying, I'm going to, because I'm this fitness expert that everybody knows, I'm going to tell everyone you eat bad food. I'm going to tell everyone that you're not who you are. And I'm like, they're not going to believe you. They know who I am. So he keeps going, because then he's not getting an emotion from me. He's not getting a reaction. And then he tells me, I'm going to ruin you. I'm going to take you down, and I'm going to kill you. And in that moment, now it's one thing to say it in a normal voice, but to be whispering in someone's ear like he did on that cruise ship, it just, it
Yes.
sends chills down your spine. And so I knew in that moment. Now, also, again, for those listening, and I'm sure you had to do this too,
Mm.
you can't always put all your cards out on the table and go, I'm leaving. It's not going to be that easy.
Mm.
So sometimes you have to come up with a master plan, and you have to take little tiny baby steps behind the scenes to get ready for your exit. So I started doing things like I got a storage unit, and I would just start to take little things that were really important to me to this storage unit over time. And then I'm not going to tell all the things that I did, but just little things like that. And then I started to tell one person just a little bit, a few of the details. And that person was very close to me. And so that person helped a little more. And then I told one more person that I trusted. So if you can get someone who really understands what you're going through and you can trust, you could start to make those little baby steps. And then talk about the power of the mind. I started visualizing, because I knew deep down inside the only way he was going to leave me alone, the only way he was going to go, fine, go, is I had to find another girlfriend. So whenever he said he wanted to go out to somewhere and stay late, or he wanted to go hang out with the boys, whatever it is, I was like, great, yes, go hang out. And so I knew what was going on. If a man is not getting his needs met somewhere, he's probably going to go somewhere else to get them. So I knew over time that he would find someone, and I knew it immediately when he started coming home and he was whistling. This is an angry man that all of a sudden he was whistling when he came home, and I was like, aha, I think he's got a girlfriend. And I was like, okay, this is good. And then finally, eventually, one day he came to me and said, I think we need to break up. And I was like, inside, I'm like, yes. But to him, I was like, okay, I agree. I think this is the best for both of us. So sometimes, again, for those listening, if sometimes you've got to put out that magnetic energy out there. You can't be thinking, I will never get out of this. This will never, I'm going to be stuck here for the rest of my life. If you really want out, you've got to get in that emotion. You got to see yourself leaving. You've got to set an intention, and then things will start happening for you. Doors will start opening, opportunities will start coming your way. And where there were blocks, look, I would have never imagined that he would just one day go to me, okay, fine, you can go. Because months prior, when I told him I wanted to break up, and actually many times prior when I wanted to break up, he was like, no, we're not breaking up. So sometimes it helps.
So how did it feel knowing that here you are, you've had this abusive relationship with this man, frightening relationship. You knew you wanted to leave because it was so abusive. And yet you knew he was then going with another woman, potentially going to repeat the same behavior. How did you handle that?
That is a really good question. And I really feel for the woman that he dated right after, because I know he was doing the same things. I found out through the kids that the same similar things were happening with her. And my heart goes out to her, but luckily she did break up with him. I did find that out. I think it was I can't remember the length of their relationship, but she was able to get out. And I felt terrible. However, I was still in that moment of suppression. I was still fearful. This man was so vindictive. I'm not even going to begin to tell you the things that he was doing to his ex-wife while I was with him. Let's just say she left the country, and he was still chasing her and trying to do things to her. So I knew if I said anything to this new woman, it would come back to me. And now this is what I thought at that moment. Now, if this were to happen to me today, I wouldn't care, because I'm in a totally different mind frame. And now also, you can't get away with doing as many ridiculous things, because a camera could be held up in the corner while that person's yelling and screaming at you and denying it. You've got evidence.
Exactly.
There were not devices like that.
That's true.
I used to call myself and let my recorder pick up and let it sit there on the bed while he was yelling at me. I was trying to have some kind of evidence
Mm-hmm.
like, that I could, give to someone down the road. But anyways, back to that woman. Yes, my heart goes out to her, that I know she had to endure, but she didn't go through it as long as I did. And who knows, maybe she put her foot down, and maybe that's why the relationship didn't last as long as ours did. But yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious. I mean, he's, as you said, was quite high profile. You had quite a high profile at the time as
Mhm.
well. And this is, on his part, repeated patterns of behavior continuously. Was he ever challenged? Was he ever cautioned by police for it or anything? Did anybody ever stand up to him? Or was it just something that everybody has, I'm going to use the term brush it under the carpet, because I recognize that survival comes into play. And actually, when you are in that state, when you are so scared, it is about your survival. And it's a case of it's either me or the other guy, and the other guy's going to lose.
Mhm.
And I recognize that because I've been there myself.
Mhm.
But for somebody with such a high profile who has repeated this pattern time and time again, did nobody ever have an inkling? Was he never approached about it?
Well, it's so funny you would bring up um, going to jail or getting in trouble or something of that nature, because it's in my book. There was one moment, and I thought this was the moment that was going to change everything. So we came back home from a vacation, and there was a message for me on the fax machine. Remember the days when
Oh,
we got all of
wow.
our details on the fax machine?
Yes.
And we had just come back from an important event. He and I were speakers together sometimes. And so we came back from this event. He didn't like what it said on this fax machine, on the sheet of paper. It was a job that I was about to do. And he got so upset with me. He pushes me up against the wall, and then he's got me pinned. Now, prior to, he would normally hit me with an object. He would find an object. I
Mm-hmm.
think in his mind, it was his way around of saying, I didn't hit you. But he would get an object like those long steering wheel locks. He hit me in the side with one of those.
Mm-hmm.
He shoved a video camera in my belly one time. He's thrown books at me, all kinds of things. But
Mm-hmm.
this particular day, he's got me pinned against the wall. He goes to punch me. I turn my head. He punches me in the ear. I fall to the ground. My ear is just like throbbing. It's making all this like loud noise.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to the doctor, and this is shortly after the OJ trial in
Mm-hmm.
California. Okay. New rules became effective after that. Whenever there's any hint of domestic violence, that person immediately goes to jail. So when I went to the doctor, I told him I made some ridiculous story, and the doctor looks at me and he's like, "Is that really what happened?" And I was like, "Yeah," because again, remember, I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
local town. I couldn't tell anyone. And then he just like shook his head, and I was like, "Oh, the gig is up." I was like, "Okay." And I started telling him, and tears started flowing. He's like, "Okay." So I told him what happened. He's like, "Look, because of this OJ trial, this is what I'm obligated to do. I must tell the cops. So you've got two choices. You can either go home right now and the police will come over later, or you can stay away from the house and I'll send the police over there and they'll go get him." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to make up this crazy, like life-changing decision in a matter of seconds." And I was like, "I'll just go home." And so I went home, and lo and behold, I think, I don't remember the time frame, I'm going to say about 30 minutes later, an hour later, cops show up. They ask what happened. Luckily, he told the truth. I don't remember how he explained it. I think, yeah, I don't remember the exact details. All I know is the cops said, "You're going to jail." They took him. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is the moment that's going to change the trajectory of his life. Things are going to get better from here on
Mm-hmm.
out. He's finally been caught. Like you said, someone finally made him face what he's doing. So I get that notorious one phone call from jail, and he asked me, "Please change your story, please. Like, I'll go back to the way I was." Like, he was never really completely like,
Mm-hmm.
a 100% even keel person. But he was like, "Please change your story. This is going to ruin me. Please just like," so he begged me. So I told I think it was a private investigator, whoever's in charge of the case. I changed my story. And I knew in that moment that I shouldn't have. But in that moment, I was worried about what he was going to do to me if ever he got out of jail months later, years later, weeks later. I was so afraid. So I was like, okay, I'm going to change my story. So he gets out of jail the very next day and he goes right back to his old habits. So that was his one moment where he was presented, with, hey, you can't keep doing this. And now maybe he's a changed man now. I have purposely distanced myself from him. I hope and pray that he has changed his ways. But at that moment, yeah, he went to jail. I had that one moment. But again, everything in life happens for a reason. It really does.
It does. Oh my goodness, Cheryl, what a story, and so many twists and turns,
right?
A lot of which I can absolutely empathize with. It's quite frightening when you think what we endure in the pursuit of true love. But I really, really appreciate you being so open and honest and sharing your relationship story with me here on the Real Relationship Show. And Cheryl, if any of our listeners or our viewers want to find out more about you, where can they find out more about Cheryl Broughton, perhaps get your books or anything like that?
Sure. Thank you. I do want to end this with a happy note. I did end up finding the man of my dreams. And guess what? He's younger than me.
Fantastic.
He's amazing. He's a wonderful man. So it does have a happy ending. But readers and viewers can check out my book, Your Epic Encore, on Amazon. And they can also go to my website, which is CherylBroughton.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Cheryl. I'll put the details in the show notes as well. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.